Welcome to The Explainer. We're jumping right into Week 1, Foundations, Awareness Before Skill. Today I'm putting on my communications expert hat to tackle a mystery that literally plagues all of us. Why do you freeze up when it matters most? You know the exact feeling I'm talking about, right? The stakes are high, you really need to perform, and then, suddenly, everything just stops. Well, today we're going to normalize that anxiety and introduce an incredibly simple reset tool. I want to share a moment from my own life that I almost never talk about. A few years ago, I was in a boardroom with 5 executives. These were the big decision makers, and I had prepped for this exact conversation for 3 weeks straight. I knew my material inside and out. I'd anticipated literally every objection. But then, the CEO leans forward, crosses his arms, and asks a seemingly basic question about my proposal. And in that exact second, the room went completely silent, and my mind went terrifyingly blank. I could actually hear the hum of the air conditioning. I could feel my own heart pounding in my ears. I opened my mouth to speak, and absolutely nothing came out. I was just utterly paralyzed, trapped in this silence that felt like it lasted for a lifetime, watching my credibility just dissolve in real time. Just pure sheer nerves.
So why do we freeze up when it matters most? I share that disastrous little story with you because I know for a fact I'm not alone in it. Think about your own life for a second. Think about that high-stakes job interview, or a really difficult conversation with a partner, or that time you had to speak up in a crowded meeting. You're smart, you're super capable, and yet in the exact moment you need your intellect and your voice the most, they completely abandon you. It feels like a massive personal failure right in that moment, doesn't it? It kind of feels like you just aren't good enough. But as we're about to see, this has absolutely nothing to do with your competence and literally everything to do with your biology.
Section 1, Your Brain Under Pressure. To really get this, we have to strip away all the shame and guilt we usually associate with these communication breakdowns, and just look at the plain language science of what's actually happening inside your head. It all comes down to the fight, flight, or freeze response. This is a physiological reaction to a perceived threat or stressful event. Now really notice that word, physiological. This is not some personality flaw, it's not an inherent weakness. This is just your brain doing exactly what it evolved to do, which is trying to protect your body. When you step into a high-stakes conversation, your brain's alarm system, the amygdala, it doesn't know the difference between a saber-toothed tiger and an intimidating boss. It just senses a threat, so it dumps cortisol and adrenaline straight into your system. It reroutes blood away from the prefrontal cortex, the logical language-producing part of your brain, and sends it out to your limbs. So when your mind goes blank, it is quite literally because your brain has shut down the communication center to prepare you to either run away or survive an attack. You aren't failing at all. Your biology is just temporarily taking the wheel. Once that biological alarm bell rings, the stress typically shows up in high-stakes communication in one of 2 super polarizing ways. The first is exactly what happened to me, freezing up and going completely blank. It's the classic deer in the headlights, total system shutdown, where you cannot access a single word. But the second way is just as common, even if it's a bit less talked about as a panic response, and that is rambling and over-talking. Instead of freezing, your system basically goes into overdrive. You start filling the silence with words, just any words, talking in circles, completely unable to land the plane. You're just desperately hoping that if you keep talking long enough, you'll eventually stumble into a safe harbor. But here's the thing, both the freeze and the ramble, they're just 2 sides of the exact same biological coin. Section 2, the 3-step reset.
So how exactly do we short-circuit this deeply ingrained biological reflex? Well, the answer is pause, breathe, speak. I know, it sounds almost aggressively simple, doesn't it? But remember, we are fighting biology here, and biology requires a physical intervention. When you feel that freeze coming on, or when you realize you're starting to ramble, you have to forcefully interrupt the pattern. I'm going to demonstrate exactly how this works right now in real time. When that CEO asked me that tough question, here's what I actually should have done instead of completely panicking. First, mentally acknowledge the question. Then, step 1, pause. Step 2, take a deep, slow, audible breath in through the nose. And finally, step 3, speak. That is an excellent question. Let me break down the data for you. See, by forcing the pause, you stop the ramble. By forcing the deep breath, you send a clear oxygen signal to your nervous system that you are safe, and that brings the blood flow right back to your prefrontal cortex. Only then do you actually proceed to speak. Pause, breathe, speak. It takes 3 seconds, and trust me, it changes absolutely everything.
Section 3, Awareness Before Skill.
From this day forward, I really want to shift how we look at our own potential as communicators. Communication is a skill, and skills can be trained.
I really need you to internalize this deeply. We have this frankly toxic societal myth that great communicators are just born that way. We tend to think that people who effortlessly command a room or who never seem to stumble over their words just possess some magical personality trait that we simply lack. But guys, that is absolutely false. The people who handle high-stakes conversations smoothly, they've just trained their nervous systems and their habits better than you have so far. They've learned how to manage their fight, flight, or freeze response. If communication is a skill rather than a static personality trait, it means you are not stuck. You're not doomed to always freeze up in the boardroom or ramble your way through arguments forever. You can train this. You can build this muscle, just like any other.
But before we can actually train the skill, we have to build the awareness. You simply cannot fix what you can't clearly see. So here's your very first behavioral challenge for today, and I promise it is completely low stakes. Your practice is just this. Notice one single moment today where you froze or where you overtalked. That's it. Maybe it's just a slight hesitation on a phone call, or maybe you find yourself rambling a bit too long when you're explaining a task to a coworker. When it happens, just notice it and write it down. Absolutely no fixing yet, no judgment. Seriously, no beating yourself up over it. Right now, we're just acting as neutral scientists, observing our own biological responses out in the wild. We are building the foundational awareness that makes all of our future skill building possible.
Which leaves us with this final, lingering question to carry with you today. If communication is truly just a skill, how could you actually become if you stopped fighting the freeze, stopped shaming yourself for a totally natural biological response, and simply started noticing it? What kind of conversations could you have? And what kind of rooms could you command if you mastered the pause, the breath, and the speech? Think about it. Go out there, observe your communication today, and we'll see you on the next explainer.